thank you to everybody who is taking the time. Here in Toronto, it's a beautiful day. So if you chose to sit in on this webinar instead of going outside and enjoying a lunch hour outdoors, I really appreciate your sharing your time with us here today. So you've joined a webinar on planning a nonprofit blog you can manage. And my goal is to give you the tools and the tips that I've learned that will help you to make blogging manageable. So I'd like to start by introducing myself and giving you an idea of why I'm speaking on this topic today. My name is Marlene Oliveira, and I am a communications consultant offering copywriting and communications planning services directly to nonprofits. My background is in nonprofit. I've always worked in the sector. I've been in the sector since 1999, and in 2008, I started consulting to the sector. So I was in-house first. I did the grassroots jobs. I was a senior communications manager in a large organization for a number of years. And like I said, since 2008, I've been offering my services as a consultant. Now, a couple of years ago, I created a blog called the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog. I hope some people on the call are familiar with it, but if you don't know about it, basically, it is a blog completely dedicated to marketing communications how-to for nonprofits. And it's a community blog, so I'm going to talk about this as we go through the presentation, but the majority of the content is written by nonprofit communicators, members of the community. And at the same time that I launched the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog to support the networking and community building, I launched NPMC Twitter chat. So that's a monthly chat that happens the last Thursday of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So actually, this month's chat is tomorrow, and we're talking about bringing your organization's history into your storytelling. So that's another resource for you to ask questions and meet your peers in the sector. And sort of around the same time that I launched the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog, I started to do more training and more facilitation and more workshops so that I wasn't only consulting one-on-one with nonprofits, but that I was also serving a larger number of organizations through training. And in the last couple of years in particular, I've noticed that there are many nonprofit communicators who want to start a blog or who want to do a better job of blogging, but that come up against that problem of being resource-strapped or time-strapped. And I realized that because of my experience running the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog, I've probably got some valuable experiences to share. And of course, my familiarity with the nonprofit context plays in here as well. But when it comes to the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog, like you, there are no staff dedicated to running this blog. I'm so fortunate to have many people willing to write blog posts for us, but this is just me. It's just part of my day-to-day. There's minimal budget. I don't spend a lot on this blog, and it truly is a side project. It's a side project on the side of my consulting and training business. And I also actually blog at moflow.ca, which is my business website and my business blog. So I run two blogs, my business blog and this multi-author community blog. So I get, how to do it in a manageable way on the side of many other things that need to be done. And I've put things in place and done the work I need to do so that now this blog is super smooth running. It's a smoothly running blog that fills itself with content. It practically fills itself with content, and it's manageable as a side project. So I don't want to minimize the amount of work that blogging can be. It is a lot of work. It's always a lot of work because you're creating this need for content on an ongoing basis, but there are ways to keep it manageable. So one more thing about me that I wanted to mention is that I have a 4-year-old. And a book has come back into my life off and on over the last few years. Every time it kind of becomes a favorite at bedtime again. And that's the story of The Little Engine That Could. And it's come back into circulation in the last few weeks as I've been getting ready for this webinar. And I realized that there are some real parallels between this story and what we're going to talk about today. So for anyone who knows the story of The Little Engine That Could, at the very beginning, we've got a train full of goodies, and the little red engine pulling that train just stops working. They're actually not clear in the book what happened, if it ran out of fuel or if it broke down, but to me, this little red engine that broke down is blogging without a plan. It's blogging without the right elements in place to keep it going. And On the other hand, blogging with a plan and with the right elements is more like the hero of the story that you can see here, this little blue engine, who takes on the job, knows there's going to be some uphill work, but once that work is in place, the journey is going to feel for this little blue engine a little more smooth and a little easier because it's going to start to be a downhill journey with momentum behind it. So I've told you a little bit about me and where I'm coming from, and I'd like to learn a little bit from you before we jump into the meat of the content. So we're going to be pretty interactive during this webinar. We're going to ask you to participate in quite a few polls today because I love learning from you while I'm facilitating. So the first poll is to ask you, which of the options that you're about to see best describes your blogging experience? And Marina's going to help with the polls today, so I'll hand that over to Marina.
Great, thanks Marlene. So everybody, we've got the first poll up on the screen, and all you need to do is just vote for which option works for you. So I'm interested in starting up a blog for my nonprofit, or we have a blog but need help keeping it manageable, and you can just click whichever one it relates to you on your screen. So we've got just about everybody's voted now, Marlene. I'm going to just close this poll and share the results with everyone.
Great.
So wow, 71% interested in starting up a blog, 29% have a blog already and need help keeping it manageable.
Thank you, Marina. So that is so interesting to me. I love it. I love hearing that you are interested in getting the right things in place before you even started, or that you're up and running and you know there's room. There are little things that you want to pick up to get this underway. I am sort of surprised. It's very cool that we've got 71% who haven't started a blog yet but are so interested that they're here today. So thank you. All right. So here's what we're going to do today. It's very simple. I'm going to share really two elements throughout the presentation. I'm going to talk about challenges that I hear people are facing when it comes to nonprofit blogging. And I'm going to share my tips learned from working with the nonprofit MarCommunity blog and working with clients about how to keep those challenges under control. So let's start going through some of these challenges. I'm going to get into them in detail as we go through, but right off the top I wanted to list them for you. Whenever I'm developing content, developing training, I like to ask people what their challenges are, and there are many, but these are some of the top recurring challenges I'm hearing about with nonprofit blogging. So one of them is justifying the time that's required for blogging. Another challenge is coming up with compelling content ideas. I'm hearing that communicators are struggling with the review, revision, or blog post formatting process, or having trouble generating enough content. And many are asking, how can I get my blog seen? What should they be doing about blog promotion? So we're going to go right into another poll, and this time my question for you is, which of these challenges that I listed is the biggest blogging challenge for you?
Great. So once again, everybody, if you can just take a moment to vote on your screen, we have justifying the time required for blogging, coming up with compelling content ideas, review, revision, formatting process, generating enough content, or blog promotion, getting our content seen. So if you want to choose whichever is the biggest challenge for you, and we'll just give it a few more seconds, let a few more people have a chance to vote here. Excellent. So I'm just going to put the results on the screen here. So it's quite a range, Marlene.
It is, and it's very interesting. I did used to get so many questions about formatting blog posts, but it looks like two also not very surprising challenges I know many people are facing is that coming up with content ideas and blog promotion are top of mind. And justifying time required for blogging is not far behind. So that's what we're going to start with today. So I'm hearing time and time again, blogging is a major time investment. How can I justify it? How can I sell the idea of blogging to senior management or the board? Or how can I convince my manager that I should be spending the time I need on blogging? And I don't really feel like we should be selling blogging for blogging's sake. What I think we need, and so for each problem I'm going to tell you what I think you need. And I think as a blogger, you need a clear purpose. You need a clear purpose for your blog. I'm going to jump right back into another poll. I promise this is not a webinar of polls. We're doing 3 right off the top. But the next thing I want to ask you is, do you have a clearly defined purpose for your blog?
Great. So you guys know the drill. One more time. Go ahead and pop on yes, no, or no, but we don't have a blog yet. And probably not surprising, Marlene, since so many of our participants today don't have a blog yet.
Yes.
Let me just close off this poll now and share the results.
Well, that is super encouraging to see that of those who have a blog, it's actually more than half that have a defined purpose. So that's fantastic. So when we're talking about the purpose of your blog, you know, it's true that blogging has many benefits sort of for anyone who's blogging, any business, nonprofit, because we all want to attract high quality traffic, and blogging can help with that. Running a blog and publishing to it regularly can help to attract traffic by helping your website rank higher in search results for terms related to what you do, and in our case, for terms related to your cause. Blogging is also an excellent platform because it allows you to tell your nonprofit story in ways that are rich with social proof, you know, if we're using storytelling formats and data, telling the impact of our mission. This platform also gives us an opportunity to place calls to action online that are embedded in a context where people are already engaged. So they're coming to the blog for the content, and then you have an opportunity to ask them to take action. They're a platform that gives us a way to report back, to show our ongoing work and our ongoing progress. And a blog can serve as a hub for all of your content marketing efforts. So if you're developing other media, if you make videos and graphics, you know, a blog is a place where you can embed, share, or post other content that you're creating. Now, back to point number 1 there, attracting high quality traffic. I just wanted to point out a little tidbit from a study, the Nonprofit Marketing Guide's 2015 Nonprofit Communications Trend Report, which came out earlier this year. According to that study and that report, nonprofits' websites are their #1 most important communications channel. Nonprofits are telling us that their websites are their #1 priority. And according to HubSpot, organizations that blog have 55% more website visitors. So it's kind of obvious, you know, most of us want more traffic back to our websites because that's where we're asking our constituents to take action, and blogging can help with that. But what is your nonprofit's blogging goal? Why did you start, or why are you planning on starting a blog for your organization in the first place? In my view, you need to have a crystal clear understanding of your blog's specific goals, and that those goals should be tied back to organizational priorities. So this is where I'm saying we're not trying to justify blogging. We're blogging because it supports existing priorities of the organization. And what I'm thinking here is we're taking priorities from strategic direction, from our strategic plans. So just as examples, and these could be all over the place depending on your organization, obviously, but if it's a priority over the next year, 3 years, 5 years, to build more partnerships with organizations in your space or in your subsector, or to deepen relationships with your existing supporters and move them to further engagement, or to position your organization as a thought leader. These are big picture objectives, corporate objectives, that you can consider and roll out into specific time-based measurable blogging goals that do support the critical work your organization is already doing. Blogging is in support of existing priorities. And a benefit of thinking this way and clearly defining a purpose this way is that it leads you, as the manager of the blog, to the ability to measure success. It's going to help you to figure out what metrics to have in place. What will you be evaluating and either justifying, you know, reinforcing that this blog is a good activity for your organization, or will inform any adjustments that you're going to start making to your plans. So hand in hand with having a clear purpose for your blog is having a specific audience. It's always easier, you know, in any communications, planning, or copywriting, it's always easier to create content that's engaging. You know, everyone wants to know how to create compelling content when you have a specific audience in mind. So drill down and prioritize. Now, I know I've been there and I work with nonprofit communicators. I know as nonprofit communicators, we always have a multiple audience problem or situation or challenge. But if you're just about to get started with blogging, or you kind of recognize that your blog needs to be revitalized, try prioritizing and starting with one priority audience for your blog. And that way you're going to give yourself a chance to keep it simple, achieve early success, being able to measure that success, and then consider expanding to multiple blogs or to serving multiple groups with one blog. Okay, so deciding on a specific audience is not the only step here. And the next thing you should do, we won't get into detail in it on this webinar, but is create a marketing persona for your audience. It's so important to go to that next level of drilling down and creating a marketing persona that kind of dives into the needs, preferences, pain points, habits of your audience. So if you just Google marketing persona or audience persona, you'll find many resources on this topic. If you're an email subscriber to my email updates, I'm actually sending out a resource on that topic later this afternoon. All right, let's look at another problem, and that is a big one, and we saw that today, coming up with compelling content ideas. So what do you need if this is one of your challenges? You need to define your content scope and your content types. So first of all, what I mean by scope is the categories of content you're going to feature on your blog. Think about a blog that you like and the main categories they feature. So for me, using the nonprofit MarCommunity blog as an example, I know I want to cover a range of topics on nonprofit marketing communications, and when planning that blog, the categories or subject areas I had in mind were graphic design, public relations, copywriting, storytelling, branding. So this is just super broad. It's not specific topics. It's the main subject areas for your blog. And then with those subjects in mind, your audience and your purpose in mind, you can move on to deciding on your blog's mix of content types. So I've brought in a few examples to explain what I mean by content types. These are 5 examples of content types. You know, we could spend a whole webinar on that topic on, 16, 20 different content types and what, evaluating what we could go through for them. But what they are a format of blog post. And to that format, you can apply specific topics to create a blog subject or title. So let's go through these ones as examples so I can explain what I mean. Taking the first example, external cause-related news. So this would be a content type through which your organization shares external news that's relevant to your audience and where you would add commentary from your organization. So for example, your organization's take on a government announcement. Okay, the how-to content type is about offering a step-by-step approach to accomplishing a task that's fun, productive, or possibly helps readers to be part of furthering your cause. It's a step-by-step process type post. Another option is a case study or a success story. So here you could follow program participants, sponsors, or volunteers from their first contact with your organization through to a positive outcome to show the good work you do in a start-to-finish case study. Leadership message. You might feature a regular message from your organization's executive director or board chair, something focused and topical, perhaps something like an update toward your strategic goals. Interview style posts. So this would be where you speak with a subject matter expert, or it could be a volunteer or program participant or others, and you conduct an interview with them and you share that in a Q&A style post. It could be written, could be video, can be in different formats. So these are just 5 examples, and like I said, there are many content types you can choose from, and you'll choose based on your goals, your audience, and your subject areas. And then here are a couple of examples of what you would do with them. So let's take case studies as an example. If you've decided you're going to feature case studies of, say, your program participants or your organization sponsors or volunteers, you would go through and make a list. This is part of the brainstorming. You'd make a list of every participant, sponsor, or volunteer that you might want to profile, that you might want to feature, in a case study. Or for how-to content, you could make a list or research the questions that people are asking your organization that can be answered in a step-by-step instructional post. So you'd go through these content types and do that kind of brainstorming, and then revisit your list and start to prioritize and put on the calendar, what happens when and what's the priority, what is featured more often. And that leads into something else that I believe you need. You need a realistic publishing frequency. So to determine how often you're going to publish content on your blog, think about your capacity. Think about your capacity as your blog's managing editor and the volume of content you can produce and the different tasks you'll have to do if you're the one, say, reviewing, revising, formatting the blog. Think about the processes and systems and sign-offs that you have internally. Think about the people that you will need to rely on for their skills or, again, for their approvals. Think about the technology you need in place if you don't have everything you need in place now. And also think not just about content creation, but promotion and the time you're going to need to invest in getting each blog post seen. And the thing to do when you're establishing a realistic publishing frequency is to favor predictability and consistency. Your decision should meet the needs of your readers while being realistic about what you can stick with over the long term, because blogging really is a long-term initiative. It's a long-term project. So again, the important points here when it comes to establishing a frequency is to find that place where your goals meet what your audience wants, and this is why it's so important to create a marketing persona, to start to figure out what they want. Being consistent and predictable, because through these two, you're going to show your commitment to your blog's readers. You're going to show that you're running a reputable, reliable publication. And always focus on providing quality and offering something of value. Go with a frequency that allows you to always offer quality and provide value to your readers. So don't overdo it. Make sure to set yourself up for success by starting with a manageable frequency and then building later. So my suggestion would be to start at a lower frequency than your ideal and then try it out so that you avoid burnout in your first few weeks or first few months, and then build on that over time if you're finding it quite manageable. So I just want to bring up a little mistake that I think is behind many blogs failing, and that mistake is thinking that you can just wing it. Thinking that you can just, get to the day before the next blog post and throw something up. Because blogging success is really all about pre-planning. Otherwise, the need for content is going to sneak up on you and become overwhelming. And that's why you need an editorial calendar. So this is very much tied into those things we've already been talking about, including content types and frequency. You need to schedule out and create an editorial calendar that lists the specific posts you're going to publish and when you're going to publish them. Your calendar should extend, I think, at least a few months out. You want to be able to have a big picture plan for the next few months. And my suggestion for this is to decide on a trial phase, especially if you're starting up a new blog or revitalizing a blog for that matter. Think about a few weeks, or in my view, preferably a few months, that will be your trial phase or trial period. And during this time, that calendar that you determined, that you planned, is non-negotiable. So you're going to stick with it and you're going to do what it takes to stick with it for that trial phase. And then you're going to be able to look back and accurately determine and decide whether that was feasible on an ongoing basis. As for the format for an editorial calendar, you're going to have to figure out what works for you internally. So I actually started out with a little Word document and moved it to a Google Calendar. A Google Calendar works nicely for me because I want to see my two blogs' editorial calendars amidst my other commitments on my calendar. And of course, a Google Calendar is nice and easy to share. But you need to think about your internal systems and what's going to create the lowest barrier to getting this done, not having you look in multiple places. You'll need to think about who needs to see this editorial calendar, who needs to be able to edit it and move things around. So that will depend on what your tech is internally and what you're already working with. But the thing to remember about your editorial calendar is that blogging is a long-term approach and it's going to require consistency and commitment. So chart it out and make a commitment to it. Make a written, documented commitment to it. All right, so it sounds like this isn't a particular struggle for people on the call, but maybe that's because many blogs are not up and running yet. And once they are, you'll face this challenge of managing consistency of content, managing the review, revisions, and formatting process. And for me, the solution is blog editorial guidelines. So this is just non-negotiable for me. It's almost, I mean, you need a blogging plan, but after the blogging plan, this would be the one thing I would say, if you walk away from this webinar, do not operate a blog without blog editorial guidelines. So I'm biasing our next poll, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share, and I know we've got people who, once again, don't have a blog yet, but do you have documented blog editorial guidelines?
Great. So with that, we've got the poll up on the screen now. So go ahead and vote yes, no, or again, the popular response of no, but we don't have a blog yet. And looks like we've got most people voted now. So I will just share those results.
Wow. Okay. Great. So of our respondents, so of the folks who do have a blog, we've got the vast majority running a blog without blog editorial guidelines. And I'm going to show you the only slide in this presentation that's all caps, because I feel that you really, really need blog editorial guidelines. It will help blog management, make it so much easier. So in my view, there's no question that you need these. You need guidelines that outline your blog's purpose and your blog's plan. They need to be documented and they need to be easily accessible. Why is this so important to me? You're going to use these blog editorial guidelines many times over. For example, you'll share them when you're approaching potential contributors. Your guidelines are going to summarize everything that you're looking for in a blog post and why, so you can clearly and quickly communicate what you're looking for from potential contributors. You're going to send your guidelines to potential authors who approach you to guest blog. You know, when your blog is up and running and if it is going well, you're going to start to get incoming requests for people to guest blog for you. And these guidelines and being able to share them will help you to ensure that there's a good fit between that potential author and you and your blog before you start making any plans, before you start wasting time vetting topic ideas or outlines or drafts. You're making sure of a fit. And of course, the thing that we're assuming the blog editorial guidelines are for is as a reference for your existing bloggers. They will be a reference when the writing starts, and they can be a reference when the draft copy is nearing completion. You know, they're so handy to be able to say, I know your draft is coming in soon. Just a reminder, here are our guidelines to check your post against. Well-written editorial guidelines communicate so many critical points that you would otherwise potentially have to repeat on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. For me, with the nonprofit MarCommunity blog, I don't think a day goes by when I don't email those guidelines to somebody. You know, the most frequent reason is someone pitching a story, but I'm always soliciting new authors as well, so sometimes it's multiple times a day that I send these out. And I can't even imagine starting to write emails every time, kind of explaining the blog and what I'm looking for, the content types, etc. Now, the other thing about blog editorial guidelines is when they are readily available and you're sharing them widely, you are showing your commitment to quality, relevant, and consistent content, which makes you quite attractive to potential bloggers. So because I feel so strongly that everybody needs editorial guidelines, I'm going to spend a little more time on this point, walking you through what to include in your guidelines. So blog editorial guidelines should include an introduction to the guidelines, followed right away by a description of your blog, including your blog's purpose. So we've already talked about the importance of defining a purpose for your blog. Once you've defined that, include it in your blog's description. You're going to describe the target audience for your blog. So once again, we talked about how important that is. And it's important in your guidelines because when your authors write with a very specific audience in mind, they are more likely to create consistent content and content that is tailored to the needs and interests of your readers. We're also going to include or explain your content criteria. So what I mean here is what we discussed about your subject areas. What subjects does your blog cover? And what content types will you feature? And list those content types in order of priority. You know, if you really want to have a lot of case studies, if that's the focus of your blog, then put that first and indicate, you know, we're always looking for people to share their case studies or their personal stories about their experience with our organization. And when you list your content criteria, or sorry, your content types in this section, it also gives potential bloggers ideas about what they could write for you. You're going to specify your linking policy. So here you're going to stipulate the internal and external links that are acceptable or that are encouraged in a blog post on your blog. You will mention whether it's okay to link to commercial products or services. You'll tell guest bloggers whether they can link back to their own websites, and if yes, how many of those links you'll allow. So put your parameters about what links you want and what links you'll allow in your guidelines. And then describe your preferences when it comes to style and formatting. So this is where you can get into the details of things like your preferred headline format. Very important here is your word count range, your preferred word count range. Things like sentence length, formatting of the post with bullets and subheadings, spelling and grammar. And here within the section on style and formatting, if you have messaging guidelines or style guidelines for your nonprofit, reflect them here or link to them here. And what you want to do with the style and formatting section is to give an idea of general voice tone and format without being too restrictive. You want each writer's voice to shine through, but you don't want to restrict it or have yourself in the position of revising it too often. And at the same time, you want to provide guidance that helps you to reduce revisions later on in the process. So that's why this section is so important. And because there are many style and formatting tips or conventions that would apply to any blog, I just wanted to share a resource that might be helpful to you. Over on my blog, not the nonprofit MarCommunity, but my business blog, moflow.ca, I have a post that's all about blog post formatting. And it goes step by step explaining the formatting points, but you can also download a checklist, and that checklist could be handy for you or to share with your bloggers, just directly hand it over to them so their posts match all of the formatting points. Okay, back to what should be included. Oh, I'm sorry, and just I'll slow down for a second in case you needed to take that down. That's at moflow.ca/blog-post-formatting. Okay, so back to the guidelines. You want to include your submission and review process. So what do you need to have happen before a blogger can write for you? Do you need to see a topic, a proposed topic first? Or do you need to see an outline, or do you need to see both, one then the other? Or can someone go straight to sending you a draft? Who do they need to send any of these items to? And here's where you actually specify an email address or specific person, or at least a specific email address, contact information. Make it easy for them to submit, and be clear about how long everything takes. Let them know, if you submit a post, it will be considered. You'll hear from us within X number of days or weeks, and apply that to either topic submission, outline, or draft. How long will every step of the process take? So someone has an idea if they're writing for you or pitching a story, what they can expect. If they're not going to be featured on your blog for a full 2 months, but they know that, then just be clear, and that will make everything go a little more smoothly. You also want to include your republishing policy or your repurposing policy. So if someone is writing content specifically for your blog, do you allow them or welcome them to share that on other blogs or websites? And if yes, what are the terms for doing so? So an example is, would you like them to wait 2 weeks or 1 month before they reuse this content somewhere else? And then include in your guidelines any other items that need to be submitted. What else do you need? You might need a photograph, a headshot of your author or contributor. You might need a bio. You might want links to their social networks or their websites so that people can learn more about that particular contributor. Depending on the posts and the content types that you feature, you might be requesting or requiring other things like a feature image to accompany the blog post, or other images to illustrate a point, videos to embed. So list any other media that you need and any specs for what you need. Do you just want embed code if it's a video? Do you want pictures of a certain format or size? And once you have this all in place, all gathered together, your guidelines can take really any number of formats. It doesn't have to be a big, huge deal. It could be 1 page of bullets listing everything, that covers everything I've gone through, or it could be a little bit more elaborate, explaining and going into more detail. But the most important thing is that you post them somewhere. You document your guidelines and publish them in an accessible location. Don't hide them behind a password. If you're going to ask external bloggers to contribute, don't put it on your intranet instead of your website. Make it easily accessible by being able to just share a URL to send people to them. Like I said, I share that link every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. So you want to make it easy for you to share, for people to access. It will come in so handy. So related to the guidelines and keeping things streamlined, I think that you need documented processes to keep blogging manageable. As you start to get into the swing of the different tasks you need to do as a blog managing editor, think about, formatting your posts, or creating custom images for posts, or planning your social media shares. Start to document your processes. Like make a little one-pager, a cheat sheet for some of the things that you do on a really regular basis. This is going to be helpful to you if you need to ask for help. You could potentially even be starting to carve out a volunteer role, or at least, if you want to go on vacation and you want to keep the blog running, you'll have things documented. Or it might just help you to complete the task the next time. I have a specific type of post I need to create once a month. After we have our Twitter chat, over on the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog, I post our archives. There are a few little formatting things that I don't normally have to do the rest of the month. It involves a little bit of code. It involves a couple of little workarounds. And I have to admit, I forget every single month some little aspect of that, and I refer to my cheat sheet to make sure that I can do that quickly and not struggle to figure it out all over again. Okay, so here's a familiar problem for bloggers, and that's keeping up with content production. And there are many things we can talk about in terms of productivity, and we've talked about content ideas, but in terms of your role as a blog managing editor, I think you need contingency plans. Contingency plans are so important because even with the best laid plans, ironclad editorial, calendar, the best contributors, something is going to fall through or something is going to change. Someone's going to ask you to bump content, so you need to be ready for it. And here are some of examples. There are different things you're going to be able to do internally, but here are some contingency plans that I really like to have available to me. One of those, and this can work for any blogger, is evergreen blog posts. So have a lineup of evergreen blog posts that are ready to be deployed if a submission comes in too late to publish or it falls through altogether. So what do I mean by evergreen blog posts? These are posts that are timeless. They're not time sensitive. They're not tied to any events. And they offer a timeless value. They'll be useful to the reader whenever they are published. Those how-to posts can be an example of something that it's a step-by-step process for something people might want to do any time of the year, uninfluenced by what's happening on the calendar. So set aside time to write first and stockpile a little catalog of evergreen blog posts that can be published on the blog when there's a hole. Another example of a contingency plan is crowdsourced content. So that can be a way to get content together in a pinch, turning to your community to pull together a blog post. And for me, an example that I like to use is what I call a roundup post. And what I do is I turn to a group that I've identified over time as willing thought contributors, and I ask them to answer a specific question within a specific word count. So I go out and I send a few emails around saying, what's your favorite book on this topic, or some very specific question, and I say, can you answer this in 100 words or 150 words? And then I pull it together in a post. So this can be a nice, quick way to fill in blog content when something falls through. And the work here is in identifying who to ask, in reaching out to them, and in compiling the answers. Because in terms of writing, all you need to do is write a quick introduction and maybe a conclusion. And these can be really popular posts because people like hearing from their peers in the community. And then this is sort of more of a general principle, but a contingency plan to have in place is flexibility, the ability to be flexible. So build enough flexibility in your calendar to delay a post in case something else needs to be featured. And one way to build in room for moving posts around is it comes down to the content types that you feature. So when you're planning your mix of content types, include types on the schedule, sort of like those evergreen posts, or it can be the evergreen posts, that can be pulled and can go at the end of the rotation or be moved around a little bit later to protect the space of other posts on the calendar. All right, something else that I feel you need is a clear late submission policy. You need clear terms for what's going to happen with late submissions. Specify this in your editorial guidelines in your submission process, and tell people what's going to happen to submissions that come in after an agreed upon due date. So you've got those evergreen posts lined up so that you don't have to wait around and entertain late submissions. In my example, at this point on the Nonprofit MarCommunity blog, if a post comes in after a date that we've agreed on, it just gets bumped to the next available spot in the rotation. Things happen, people get delayed, but I don't have enough flexibility to scramble at the last minute because somebody was late. Because again, I'm keeping it manageable. It's a side project. So they get bumped later in the rotation, which for us at this point is a few months out. And if someone else falls through, then they get that slightly earlier slot. And I know this is not going to work for all of your bloggers. You're not going to bump your executive director or your chair of the board, or you might not be able to bump certain very time-sensitive content. But if you have this as a general rule, it'll make your life so much easier and you can stop chasing. The other thing I feel you need is a mix of contributors. You need a mix in terms of the frequency with which they're going to contribute and the voices that they bring to your blog. So sort of tied to the last point, some contributors are going to be able to contribute more often, and some of them are going to be more reliable than others. But you do want to cultivate and grow a group of all kinds of contributors who have different levels of capacity and different levels of responsibility. I mean, you can potentially rely on certain staff, and you just can't kind of crack the whip on certain volunteers who might contribute. So to include everyone, make sure you have a certain baseline of people who won't need to be chased. And that'll make it easier when you do have to do more follow-up with others. And assuming that your authors are working within your established editorial guidelines, be flexible about letting their individual voices come through. It'll be too much work if you're trying to revise everybody so that every single blog post sounds like it was written by the same person. It doesn't need to be. The blogging format is great for multiple voices. So make sure you're including a mix of voices on your blog in terms of a variety of types of contributors. And then something else you're going to need is a system for ongoing outreach to solicit content. So start to get into a mindset of always being on the lookout for potential blog contributors and always offering blogging opportunities when you see a fit. Some of these are going to work out and some are just absolutely not going to work out. But if you start to cultivate this system and start to move into this mindset, you'll slowly be growing your stable of authors, and that's going to make blog management and content development much easier. So, think about your volunteers, think about your board members, think about staff in marketing roles and outside of marketing roles. Think about subject matters that are close to your organization. Think outside, think a little further afield to people who blog on other sites that you'd love to see featured on your blog. Think about speakers when you're at an event. If you see someone who you think would be an excellent contributor, sorry, I have a pause for a drink of water. Fighting off the last bit of a cold. And then think about it when you're networking. People love to be asked to contribute to a nice, established, well-run publication. Excuse me. So having this opportunity to offer in a networking situation is awesome. Blogging is a great relationship builder. All right, so one more problem here that we're going to talk about is getting your content seen. Now, you're going to want to develop a promotional plan for your blog, and that's going to be very much dependent on your audience and the marketing persona you developed for them and your purpose. But your blog promotion is going to include a mix of keyword targeting and search engine optimization, of email promotion of your blog posts, either one post at a time or in your mix of email updates, and social media, where you'll be finding your audience where they are to promote blog posts. But a thing that I think you need that might not be as obvious is partnerships and relationships. So I think that you'll benefit if from the very earliest days of your blog, you embrace a spirit of generosity, that you are looking for opportunities that you can share with people outside of your organization through guest blogging opportunities that you will offer, by offering to profile them in your content, in case studies or in profiles. Maybe even simply by linking to their blogs, linking to resources they provide. Because when it comes to blogging, a far quicker way to expand your reach is to collaborate. I do get questions about, should we talk about other organizations in the space on our blog, or, should we be keeping this just to our content? And I think you should be open and sharing. Even for-profit organizations and consultants like me benefit so much by being generous in this online blogging space, far more than we would by just keeping to ourselves and never giving anyone else a spotlight on our online properties. So I believe that successful blogging is about relationship building, and it can be an amazing opportunity for relationship building, relationships that you want to extend into the other work of your nonprofit organization. All right, so I have gone over everything that I'm going to today about what I think you need to keep blogging manageable. So let's recap that very quickly. You need to have in place a clear purpose for your blog. You need a specific audience in mind when you're developing your plan and your content. You need to have clarity and definition around the scope of content that you're going to offer and the specific content types you're going to feature. You're going to need to decide on a realistic publishing frequency. You need an editorial calendar, a documented editorial calendar, and definitely editorial guidelines in place. It's very helpful to have documented processes and some contingency plans in place to help you keep up. You need clear terms about what's going to happen with late submissions, and you need to be working with a mix of blog contributors. Finally, the last 2 points, you need a system for an ongoing solicitation of content or an ongoing recruitment of potential bloggers, and you need to work in a framework of partnerships and relationship building. So this might seem like a lot of things, and putting all of these elements in place at the beginning or when you're revitalizing your blog is going to take time, but it's well worth it. Blogging really is a serious commitment, even when you get it into a manageable, workflow. And it is a major time investment. People ask you, how do I justify the time spent? So it's so important to be smart and deliberate about the decisions you make and the processes that you have in place to make it manageable and streamlined. And, headed toward a clear purpose. And to return to my analogy from the beginning of the webinar, when you are prepared and when you have the right systems in place, that goes a long way toward keeping your blog chugging along, so to speak. So my experience with the nonprofit MarCommunity blog was that getting these elements in place and having these elements in place, it still meant some uphill work, some hard uphill work. And that famous phrase, I think I can, definitely factored in the first year or so. But we've got to a point, we're now 2 years old, where the momentum is going. We're cresting that hill, like you see that happy train bringing all those happy goodies for the good little girls and boys on the other side of the mountain. And it is very manageable. Running this blog as a side project is super manageable. Now, everything I described today is easier to implement and will flow very naturally if you have a carefully considered and documented blogging plan. So let's go to our last poll of today. And I apologize for everyone who doesn't have a blog yet, that you keep having to answer no, but we don't have a blog yet. But here's the next blog. Do you have a documented blogging plan? And I'll hand it over to Marina.
Great. So everybody, you've got it up on your screen here so you can vote. We have a blog but no documented plan. We have a blog supported by a documented plan, or we don't currently have a blog. So looks like we've got just about everybody in there. So I will just share those results with you all. It's, probably what you would expect, maybe, Marlene?
Yeah, it's very, very common. And what I'm hearing is that nonprofits want to have a plan. And I feel like you need a blogging plan. So if you're coming out of this webinar and you have answered, so it's probably the majority of the people on this call, because you either need to get a plan in place as you start up your nonprofit's blog, or you have a blog and you came on this webinar because you want it to be more manageable. So for me, the starting point for you is to get a plan in place. I do have another resource for you that I wanted to share, because I do feel that blogging without a plan is more likely to cause you to lose steam, to go back to those steam engines. So if you head over to Now, this is a checklist I offer to people who join as subscribers to my email updates. I'm going to explain why. So I do offer training and ongoing blog posts about blogging, editorial planning, and copywriting. Right now I'm nearing the end of a training program on blogging for nonprofits, and we've been walking through a really broken down step-by-step process of getting a solid blogging plan in place. So if you sign up for my email updates, first of all, you're going to get this checklist at this URL, and secondly, you will be alerted the next time I'm offering training in the subject area. I may be translating what I'm offering right now through a teleseminar series to another format to make it available to more people very soon. So sign up if you want to know about that, and if you want to be walked step by step through the process of creating a blogging plan. And if you do have a blogging plan, because people have definitely said they have it, review the other elements that we've gone over today to fill in any gaps. You know, you've got a plan, so from that plan, you should be able to pull together editorial guidelines. I would say that would be the next step. And then start to roll out and look at some of these other things you can use to streamline and manage your workflow. And when you have a blogging plan combined with an editorial calendar, you've got a nicely defined blog planning strategy, or a blogging strategy that's really going to set you up for success with blogging. So that's what I've got for you today, and I guess we've got time now to take a few questions.
That's great. Thanks, Marlene. We've got quite a few questions, so we'll just dive right in. First up, is there generally a typical frequency that you would suggest, or a critical amount of time that might be, you know, too long, or when you might lose followers if you're not frequent enough?
What a great question. So blogging can be as frequent as multiple times a day. There are some blogs that post multiple times a day. To me, that sounds a bit intense for a nonprofit organization. Those are usually blogs where the blog is the business. But I definitely think you want to be publishing at least monthly, preferably a couple of times a month, because blogs are expected to be lively and constantly updated. So if someone sees a blog that hasn't been updated in over a month, they might assume it's an abandoned blog, and they might not come back. If you use email to notify people that you have a post up, and I know this from my own experience when I've taken breaks, people will forget about you. They'll even forget that they subscribed to your blog. Even if they did, they are the ones who subscribed. So they may unsubscribe from your updates. You've got to kind of stay top of mind and be predictable as your priority.
Great. And for getting guest bloggers from within your organization, do you have any tips on how to encourage people to participate and show them that sharing their stories is actually really valuable?
Yes. So one of the starting points I recommend people do is really brainstorm widely on who might contribute to your blog. So I mentioned some of those potential contributors, and it sounds like this question is referring to staff that are internal. So brainstorm everyone who might be able to blog for you, and then look at that list and think about who you can reasonably convince to blog, and who will be reliable and easy to work with at the beginning. Because nothing gets people more interested in participating than an already successful blog. So go out and do your outreach to people who are going to cooperate. If you already have a blog, have a bit of a relaunch, create a little bit of buzz about revitalizing your blog, or if it's a new blog, launch that blog with a core suite of content. So either content that's already populated on that blog when it starts, or kick it off as a launch phase where you are going to publish multiple times a day, or once every day for a month or a week, and get people wanting to join in and not wanting to be left out.
Wonderful. We've had a lot of questions about editorial guidelines, so perhaps we can go back to that for just a moment. First up, do you have any resources or suggestions for people looking to create their editorial guidelines of where they could go for templates or more information?
Definitely. So I do have an article on my website at moflow.ca. Because we're screen sharing, I don't want to pop out back over there to get the exact URL. But if you go over to my blog, and when you're in the blog, enter editorial guidelines in the search, you're going to find an article I wrote on step-by-step how to write editorial guidelines.
Fantastic. And perhaps when we follow up with everybody with the webinar recording, we can include that link since it's been a common question. Yeah, that would be great.
And I would say, sorry, if you don't mind, I would like to add, just have a look around at examples too. Because if you look at other nonprofits or just other blogs, a blog that you really like, say it's, you know, a blog you follow for professional development like Marketing Profs, or just look at their guidelines and get some ideas.
Great. And on that note, we've had a few participants ask if they should be posting their editorial guidelines conspicuously on their website or only sharing it with potential contributors.
I can't imagine a downside to anyone stumbling upon your guidelines. They don't have to be completely conspicuous. If you go to Nonprofit MarCommunity, you probably won't find them unless you do a little poking around, but they're there. So it's not a hidden link that you only get if I send it out to you. I say make it widely available because if someone does stumble upon them and you've done a good job, they might be interested in blogging for you and you might want them.
Great. And here's a good question that I think a lot of nonprofits would be looking at. Could a volunteer manage a blog assuming that you have these clear guidelines and plans set in place?
You know, I think that one comes down to your volunteer program and recruitment and how reliable your volunteer that you recruit is going to be. That's something where I feel my advice would be potentially yes, but it makes more sense to me for a staff person to be the blog managing editor and then outsource everything else. So that person is the core person responsible for the blog, but maybe they get to a point, like I am with my blog, where they never or almost never have to write a post, or they never create graphics for the post because they've got a volunteer doing that, or they maybe never even proofread because they've got a volunteer doing that. But there's a little more continuity and more direct connection to the rest of the work of the organization if that managing editor role stays with staff, in my view.
Great. And we've had a couple of questions about sort of the central nature of blogs. So in the past, a lot of times the blog was considered, as you mentioned, the content hub and, everything, social media and e-newsletters, all of that sort of stemmed out from the blog post. Do you think that's still the case today? Or do you think that it's more a situation where social media has become more important?
No, I don't think social media is more important. I think that your blog is a property that you own and it generates traffic to your website. So in my view, it should be a priority. It should be the hub. And then your blog editorial plan should be tied into your overarching communications planning, communications goals. So it flows from your core priorities. And then you get the word out about your blog through social media, or your blog can inspire what you're going to share on social media. But if I was to choose where to invest time, I would be thinking about the blog as the major investment and social media as an extension of it.
Great. And I think we have time for just one last quick question, and that is, do you ever recommend reposting from another blog, or do you think it should be all original content?
It's an interesting question. I wonder why they want to repost. Google can punish you for just republishing content from somewhere else, and especially if they can't tell and it seems like content scraping or plagiarism. I would recommend that you're developing original content because those two posts are also going to be competing for search engine results. They're both going to show up in search engine results. So my preference for my blogs and that I advise nonprofits I work with is develop original content for your blog and make that the source.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again, Marlene, for a wonderful presentation. We had a lot of activity on Twitter and a lot of questions, and you covered a lot of information. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for attending, and thank you for having me. I can't wait to check out the Twitter traffic.
Awesome. And just before we sign off, I want to remind all of our participants that we are going to follow up with you by email with the webinar recording and the presentation slides, and we'll try to pop that link that Marlene was talking about the editorial guidelines into that email as well. We're also going to include a link to a short survey. If you could take 5 minutes to fill that out, it's really helpful for us in further refining our webinar content and delivery. You're going to have an opportunity there to let us know if there's any topics you'd like to see us cover in a future session. So that's that's super valuable for us. And I just want to thank you all again for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.